We'll move on to other issues now, and that is the Supreme Court in Abuja today adjourning the hearing of the Imo and Zamfara State governorship review till tomorrow, March the 3rd. The PDP governorship candidate, Honorable Emeka Ihedioha, is seeking for the Supreme Court to step aside the Supreme Court verdict which sacked him. In a similar manner, the Apex Court also adjourned the hearing of the Zamfara governorship judgment due to the APC Zamfara chapter's failure to serve all the parties involved. We try to make sense of the latest development on the Imo and Zamfara governorship judgment. Joining us indeed in the studio is legal practitioner Richard Nwankwo, also president founder Crusade for Justice. That's a human rights advocacy group. We'd like to welcome you to the program.
Thank you very much.
All right. We didn't see this coming. I mean, it's another adjourned ruling expected tomorrow in view of the Imo State. We hear that counsel to Mr. Ihedioha asked the court today for one-day adjournment to enable him look into the process that had just been served. Should we expect more of these processes?
Well, I think these are unusual times, and you don't put anything beyond the capacity of the contending parties. There has been a lot of surprises. There's been a lot of legal calisthenics. For those of us that are into active law practice, there are a lot of disappointments. So I think the categories of surprises will never be closed in these cases, and we expect to see more of that.
We're going to take a break now, but when we come back, we'll try to find out your thoughts if, Imo case is similar to that of Bayelsa, or if it will go either way. We'll tell you what some other legal experts are saying on this issue. Still to come on the program as well, Gombe State Governor is raising the red flag on Al-Majiri in the extreme north of Nigeria. We'll bring you details when we return. Welcome back to the program, but first is some of our stories in brief. Human rights group, Socio-Economic Rights and Accountability Project, SERAP, they've kicked against a bill before the Senate that would enable repentant Boko Haram terrorists enjoy foreign education. SERAP, in an open letter to the President of Senate, is asking him to ensure that the bill is immediately dropped. The group is instead asking lawmakers to sponsor bills that would ensure access to justice, reparation for victims of Boko Haram terrorist group. In the letter dated 28 February 2020, signed by the SERAP Deputy Director Kolawole Oluwadare, the organization says the bill erodes justice and makes a mockery of the sufferings of victims of appalling atrocities committed by the terrorist group. SERAP insists that should both chambers of the National Assembly pass the bill and it's assented to by the President, it will take all appropriate legal actions nationally, also internationally, to ensure that it is never implemented. Elsewhere, kidnapping may no longer thrive in Nasarawa State. This is because the governor, Abdullahi Sule, has signed the anti-kidnapping bill into law. The law, which has stringent deterrence mechanisms, according to the government, will help stem the tide of insecurity in the state. Let's head back to our earlier discussion with regards to the Imo and Zamfara governorship judgment. That was just adjourned till tomorrow. We've been talking with our guest in the studio, legal practitioner Richard Nwankwo. Some people have argued that the Imo case and that of Bayelsa are two different cases, and so there will be two different outcomes. Do you disagree or agree?
Well, I think that of course, we normally say that it's difficult to compare two different cultures. The two cases are absolutely different, and there are very bold distinctions. And I think that is what should weigh, in our minds in looking at it critically. Particularly that of Bayelsa State, I think is a case that is dead on arrival. The reason being that, of course, we have precedents in the past that the governor and the deputy governor have a joint ticket as contained in Section 187 of the Constitution. And of course, you look at the communal interpretation of Section 31, sub 5 and 6 of the Electoral Act with the section I've just mentioned. It's clear that the Bayelsa episode is totally bad and maybe incurably bad, if I should use that word. And,
yes, we had some senior lawyers who felt there was merit.
It is bad, and there is no basis for comparison with what is going on in Imo. I think Imo is an exception. And personally, I I look at the Supreme Court judgment because I believe, with the benefit of my personal knowledge, which spans over 30 years, that there is some element of magic in the judgment. So I think what the counsel to the head of our team, what they're asking the court to do, the Supreme Court to do, is to unmagic the magic. And I think they have every right to do that. There are a whole lot of irreconcilable and shouting indices of injustice, captured in the judgment. And it is only natural that when things like this happen, that people should come up and say, this is unacceptable.
So you think
it is not within our rights to compel the Supreme Court as the last court. Of course, you know that when the court gives its own judgment, there is some element of finality to it. And within the jurisdictional ambience of the court, it has some latitude to make some surgical, corrections, especially if they have to do with minor issues, very peripheral issues that could be corrected without affecting the substantive, issues that were decided. But when you look at the entire judgment, you find out that the judgment is standing on a scaffold that is hugely defective. And like my Lord Dennis said in my Foy and USC, that you cannot keep something on nothing and expect it to stand. I think there are basic issues which the court ought to have looked into before pronouncing that judgment. I think that is why everybody is, to some extent, agitated, both the legal community and the entire citizenry. I believe that what is going on now shows that the reactions of the people, the submissions of counsel, and the attitude of all the parties involved in the matter simply suggest that there are some issues that ought to be resolved.
All right, but when you look at the review processes, a lot of people have talked about its impact on our judiciary. But for you, do you think that this makes us stronger in terms of our judiciary and also looking at our democracy with this reviews coming?
Well, I think, you see, the definition of justice cannot be omnidirectional. Justice is justice, whichever direction you look at it. And what we are confronted here is that the judgment is standing on a very faulty and challengeable, obviously challengeable, because if these things are latent, nobody would have raised any issue. Being the final court, the normal thing would have been for everybody to take it as the wish of God, as we have seen in some other cases. And of course, you will recall that in some other appeals that the lawyers that appeared before the Supreme Court were heavily sanctioned in terms of fines, which they were asked to pay. So these are the issues we have to advert our minds. But you see, over the years, what is playing out in the Supreme Court in the case of, in the Imo case, governorship election, is not totally new. The reason I'm saying that is that in recent time, we have seen a gradual emergence of discordant tones on legal principles and issues emanating from the Supreme Court, and that shouldn't be. There are critical issues and some cases that will come out this week, and the next week you see another case that departs completely from the pronouncement that were early made. And
what do you call that? Should we be worried?
Yes, yes. I mean, it's a huge blemish on our democracy. And of course, you also appreciate the fact that this is the first time the international community is being very abusive of a judgment of a Supreme Court. I've never heard of this, the international community, viciously attacking a pronouncement from a Supreme Court in any other jurisdiction. But this one has a lot of loopholes, and taking into consideration the peculiarities of the state of our political development, makes it very, very pathetic. And everybody I think the society has reacted enough to show that we really don't want this. The reason is that justice must be predicated on very firm grounds, and the evidence to be relied upon must be evidence before the court. There are a lot of implications in that judgment. Even though people believe that we shouldn't go out of our way to criticize the Supreme Court, but they must appreciate the fact that the Supreme Court is part of the Nigerian society.
We look forward to tomorrow's hearing then. We'd like to thank you, legal practitioner, Mr. Richard Nwankwo, for talking to us. President, founder, Crusade for Justice.
Thank you very much.
Now, the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, says it's committed to help sanitize the electoral space by facilitating an amendment of the electoral law. The umpire, led by Professor Mahmood Yakubu, is in Lagos with other senior officials for a retreat on the review of the electoral legal framework. The INEC chairman says areas of review will include the conduct of primaries, pre-elections matters and post-election issues. The commission says it will also engage the National Assembly to ensure that electoral laws are amended. Finally, is another critical issue that Nigeria must holistically and urgently address, and that is the high number of out-of-school children, particularly in the northeastern region, which is a fallout of the decade-old Boko Haram insurgency. Together with the Almajiri phenomenon, this portends major trouble for the society in the near future. These are the views of the governor of Gombe State, who told Channels Television's Lade Akeredolale on our current affairs program, Newsnight, that his state alone has more than 700,000 out-of-school children.
Gombe State alone has close to 700,000 people, that are out of school. And we really cater for them, welfare-wise, and we think of their future. And we must guide and control them to take them to the correct place in the future. They must go to school. Government is devising another program, which is the Basic Education Service Delivery for All. BESDA is like coming as a grant to all those states that have that challenge, of the out-of-school children.
Well, for the interview with Governor Yaya, watch Newsnight today, 2nd of March to 9 p.m. only on Channels Television. That's how we wrap things up on the show. We'd like to thank you for watching. Don't forget to join the discussion. All you need to know, our website, channelstv.com, has all the details. I'm Millicent Walker. Bye for now.